Welcome to the Rogue Startups Podcast, where two startup founders are sharing lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid in their online businesses. And now, here's Dave and Craig.
All right, welcome to episode 264 of Rogue Startups. Craig, how are you this week?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's been a hot minute since we talked, but there's been a lot going on, I think, in both of our lives. So yeah, it's good to catch up and good to be able to chat.
Yeah, well, we got COVID in the house over here.
Yeah, we were,
which is part of the reason we weren't able to podcast when we thought we were going to podcast. Now I've got 80% positive cases in my house, and I'm 8 days into it, so I'm finally feeling a little normal now, minus my inability to smell anything, which makes eating kind of weird, but it's not that much worse, I think, than a real cold that's just, super bad, and you kind of get stuck with that for a long time. But, we're working through it. My kids definitely had a easier time of it than I or my wife did, but yeah, we're all okay for the moment.
Sorry to hear for sure that you got the Roner, but glad that everyone's okay, obviously. Yeah, I mean, how did it go down? Like, how did you think that you might be sick and test and all that kind of stuff? Because actually, I know of a lot of people that, but I haven't talked to many people about the whole process.
Sure. Well, first of all, we were kind of getting a little more lackadaisical and cavalier about things in the last week of December, partly because, just not thinking it was that big of a deal anymore, and partly because, there were things to do, right? Yeah, my wife and I went out to lunch a couple of times, and I went out with a couple of guys from the Big Snow group, and we also went to some friends on New Year's Eve, and that's where we think we got exposed. Well, that's where I know we got exposed, because they had some positive cases that popped up immediately. They had some family that were visiting from the Midwest, and, they were all vaxxed and boosted, and we were vaxxed and about to be boosted, and we still got it anyway. So yeah, it was about 4 days after New Year's Eve when I finally started showing symptoms, and I was like, oh, shit, here we go. And I'm pretty sure that I gave it to my wife. I don't know if my kids brought it back at the same time as I did. We're not 100% sure about that, because they weren't telling us about their symptoms until later, after I had already tested positive. So it was kind of unclear as to when it really started for them, but we got everybody else tested except for me on Saturday, because I was already positive. And it took a lot of tests to figure that out, by the way. I went through 2 antigen and 1 PCR test, and I had a split result on the antigen tests 48 hours apart. One was negative, one was lightly positive, so barely positive you could almost not see the line. And then the PCR came back and said, dude, you totally have it.
Did you do the antigen test at home, or did you go somewhere?
No, I did the antigen test at home. We went through all of our test kits now.
Yeah.
So we've had to order a bunch more.
Right? Getting new ones.
Yeah, they're not an easy thing to get a hold of right now. So, but anyway, the tests for everybody last Saturday, we got 3 of the 4 results back today. Interestingly, my wife's came back inconclusive, but I had already done a second antigen test on her, and she was strongly positive. It didn't even take the full 15 minutes for that line to show up. It was there in the first 60 seconds. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you got it. But the one that we still don't know is my oldest daughter, who, interestingly enough, is the biggest introvert of the family and was kind of avoiding everybody else on New Year's Eve. So I'm joking that she's probably going to be the only one to survive the zombie apocalypse. She'll be hiding in the library with a bag of snacks while everybody else dies from the zombie virus. So
what a trip.
So that's kind of how it all went down.
What a trip. I mean, I think that not to get too into it, because it's a very highly charged topic, but I think that this thing about the time base of the testing is a real weakness in the whole thing, right? Of you tested negative and then indeterminate and then positive. All of those tests should be positive all the time. If there's any bit of coronavirus in your system, they should be positive and should be positive for a long time. And I know that's just a weakness of kind of where the science is, but to me, that's the big weakness of the whole thing right now. It's just tough to know where anyone stands because you're just taking a snapshot in time that seems to be kind of imperfect.
Right. I mean, the markers are the markers, right? So the antigens are the result of the virus acting in your system. So it's a secondary characteristic. It's not like we're testing directly for the presence of coronavirus. We're testing for the results of coronavirus in your system that generates other chemicals that only coronavirus generates. That's what we're looking for. So it very much depends on viral load and the time in your system. And, you can feel the symptoms before that. And also, I found something about Omicron that they're saying now that the nasal tests aren't picking up as much of the antigen. So you have to swab the throat too. And that's what we did with my wife. I swabbed her, she's like, you gagged me with a cotton swab. That's the new 80s thing, right? Gag me with a cotton swab. But I did that and it came back positive. I didn't do that for me. And, I had the weaker negative test.
Okay.
So, maybe the antigens are showing up better back up in the throat because they're being coated by the phlegm, not to turn this into some gross medical show. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, the variants are getting tricky and they're getting weird and they're getting sneaky, right? They gotta. And obviously, if we compare the flu from the Spanish pandemic in 1918 to the flu that we have today, the flu obviously has a benefit in evolving to be less deadly because it can spread itself more without killing its host, which is sort of is detrimental to its whole goal of trying to spread, right?
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm glad to hear that everyone is okay. You can not worry about COVID for the next few months, I guess, which is kind of a hidden benefit, I guess, or silver lining. It's glad to hear everyone's okay.
Yeah, we're definitely on the better end of things at this point. I think my wife's gonna be getting much better here over the next couple of days. It's definitely not as bad as we had feared it would be. So all of that is good.
Good.
Yes.
Good. And I was just looking, it's been a month since we published our last episode. So 3 weeks or so since we talked last. How are things going in the business?
Well, good. December, of course, is a quiet time for Recapture. Interestingly, we actually had a little bit of a spike between Christmas and New Year's where some people were sending out some promotions for their various stores, which was really cool because now this was the first year we had broadcast emails available to do that. And there were some people taking advantage of it and I could see some sales going on in their stores and all of that was super exciting to watch. But it was still just quiet overall on the platform. So, we spent some time sort of evaluating what we were going to do with our technical stuff. And during December, we had talked about doing this whole technical debt payoff thing here about our database. And what's interesting is that we figured out that we finally got a database expert who really knew DocumentDB on AWS, and they also knew MongoDB in general and hosted Mongo solutions and things like that. So we got them to sort of give us what the magic formula was to size because we had trouble trying to source this. The one thing we couldn't figure out was how fucking big does it need to be on AWS to be the equivalent of what we have now? And we finally got the answer for that. And the absolutely hilarious result of that was if we moved off of Object Rocket onto AWS, it would almost double our current costs.
That's awesome.
At where we're currently at. No, it was not awesome at all. So, we discovered that probably week before Christmas, I think. And, immediately that was a huge facepalm moment, right? And then I went and I did some projections forward. And there is a point at which the cost does invert. But the only way it inverts is if we self-host. So we started looking we basically have three options, right? We can stick with what we have. We can migrate to AWS DocumentDB, or we can self-host. And the self-hosted solution isn't cheap, but it is cheaper in the long run. So if I projected our current traffic and growth and all of that out for the next 24 months, somewhere between 12 and 18 months, there's an inversion of that where self-hosted actually becomes way more viable. But the problem is that with a Mongo database is that you need a shit ton of RAM. So basically you need to have all of your indexes in RAM, and then you still have to have enough that the operating system has room to spare. So you're not bumping up into paging when you're going onto the disk and things like that, because that's where it gets fast. or that's where it stays fast if it all stays in RAM. As soon as you start going to disk, everything slows down, and then it's all hell in a handbasket at that point. So that's where we figured out, we're like, okay, it's not, we don't love it right now, but it's not as bad as we originally thought, and migrating off makes it worse, and we could probably better spend our time on something else. So unfortunately, we spent 3 weeks trying to get to that point, which sucked, but there were some bright sides out of it. One of them is that we're actually going to upgrade to Mongo 4.0, 4.3 or whatever the current version is. I don't remember what Mike said. But yeah, that version is now something that we're compatible with, because we were going to have to be compatible to move to Document DB anyway. And now we can actually upgrade our stuff internally, and there's not going to be a problem for that. So that was good. That was not wasted effort. We needed to get that done anyway. So we did get a tech debt project off of our books, but it wasn't the one that I originally thought. And it certainly didn't have the intended impact, which was also unfortunate. But now I have some new information about our database stuff that I didn't have before. So there you go. That was our big December project. Let's see, what else? I also did my EOS planning. And interestingly, I did that right before, like the day I was starting to show symptoms for COVID. So I went and did my EOS planning for that. I did my annual review for last year. I looked at the goals that we achieved, and I set my Q1 rocks as well. And of course, then right after that, I got COVID, so I've done fuck all on any of that. But I have a list at this point, and I basically had dropped the ball on that the second half of the year last year because of the Jilt stuff. And I kept thinking I was going to get back to it, and I never did. And so now we're back on track. I have it all down, and I've done some annual projections here, and I'm doing some annual reporting in prep for Big Snow. So busy time.
Nice, man. Yeah, the infrastructure stuff is tough, man. We did a infrastructure change a couple of months ago, and it just never is as easy or as good from a cost savings perspective as you think. And it's just like, oh man, what this said on paper was very different than what it ends up being, and it just is a lot of opportunity cost of doing other stuff, and cost savings are about half what they end up being, what you think they're going to end up being typically. So it's just really frustrating. I totally feel you.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't totally make it a complete waste and be like, okay, well, we just spent 3 weeks figuring that all out and have to throw it all away now. So great, let's move on. At least we didn't go there. I'm glad we didn't have that. So
you were looking for a new developer too. Any update on that?
Well, yes and no. So I had, that the whole looking for folks that are developers right now is real hard. And I had a job rec that was open. Well, let me back that up. I had a job rec that I opened up for a QA guy. We hired him. Then the holidays kind of hit. It took me a while to get the training stuff ready for him. So I ended up doing a series of videos that were all like, all right, this is what you have to QA. This is what you have to QA. This is what you have to QA. So I did a video walkthrough of the features so that he could see them working in the good case, and then he could figure out all the, the other things that you would need to check. So I hired him right before Christmas. I just fired him yesterday. So that was not good. Basically did fuck all and wasn't listening to anything that we asked him to do, wasn't giving me any status reports, even with all the holiday stuff. Like I was, trying to be respectful of holiday time and all of that, but I was still getting nothing, and neither was Mike. So
that's tough.
We kicked him to the curb. So now I had one filled. Now it's back open again. I got to find somebody else for that. But the developer one, I've opened that one twice and then closed it because that's how you get more people to fill it up on Upwork. But I haven't found anybody that's like really exciting us. We I think we interviewed 3 or 4 people right before Christmas, and then we stopped. So nobody there is floating our boat so far.
That's tough. That's tough, man.
Yeah. But the other thing that I am now more focused on at the moment, because it's going to actually help me support that new developer in Q1 here, is cold sales. So I've got a cold sales guy. I don't have to interview that. Had to put that all on hold in December because of the QA stuff. Probably was a mistake now that the QA thing has all gone to shit. But it is what it is, right? So now I'm working on getting him onboarded. I just started working on that this week after being offline with COVID last week. So I think that pretty much catches us up on everything that's going on in Recapture. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely feel the pain on the developer side. We're looking for I guess you call it backend, full stack backend Laravel developer right now. And it's just challenging. We've decided not to go through like Upwork and Dynamite Jobs like we do typically, but are working with Blue Coding. So David at Blue Coding, who we've worked with in the past before, haven't actually hired someone, but they've delivered us some candidates before. Have a call to kick off that whole kind of process with them here soon to see about adding a backend developer to the team, which is cool. But I know it's just so tough right now. And I think one of the challenges that I have is like this balance of, properly interviewing and vetting folks with like a test project and multiple interview rounds and different people on the team, with the fact that developers can do whatever they want and get hired anywhere right now, it seems. And so like the standard process we would put someone through is, I think, kind of like medium on the kind of rigor scale, and wondering if we need to kind of tone that back, because a lot of people who would be good developers just say, I don't have to do that. So that's kind of the question we're asking ourselves.
That's exactly what I decided that we were going to do on our side for that exact same reason. So when we were doing the interviewing for the developers, Mike and I were doing it at the same time. So he has, we basically split it. We have an hour interview. He asks his questions for 20 minutes. I ask my questions for 20 minutes. And then we give the candidate 10, 15 minutes to kind of wrap up. And then that usually leaves a little bit of slop for somebody who goes over. And then at the end of that, we'll decide, all right, are they good enough for us to take a look at some code samples? And we'll take a look at a code sample and then try them out at that point. But nobody's gotten past the interview / code sample piece of it to go to the go, no go decision. So yeah, I mean, and I feel like we're skipping a lot of what we would normally do. I would prefer a test project, but I don't think we can do that and get decent people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's, it's just challenging. I think that maybe going through Blue Coding or a recruiter like that would give you the optionality to do that a little more than someone through Upwork or Dynamite Jobs or We Work Remotely or something like that, just because there's a bit of a relationship there. But yeah, not sure. It's interesting.
Well, I hope it goes well. Our last experience with some recruiting agencies didn't really provide us with candidates that were wowing us. And I think it's just the candidate pool is shrunk at this point. The good people can have their pick of the litter, and then that leaves a lot of chaff out there. And they're interviewing around and nobody really wants them, right? So that means there's a lot of chaff and not much wheat, and you and I are left to sort through it. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, I try to do a lot of kind of like retroactive thinking or retrospective thinking. And we talk a lot about it internally. And I think that like, if I was ever to do this again, I will have a technical co-founder. Just because for me, hiring developers is really hard just because I'm not one. And it's hard to identify who a good developer is and who isn't. And just having someone who can own that side of things would be really nice. So a little late for that now, but I think my next giddy up with this will have someone who's really complimentary to me. I think there's just a ton of value in that.
Yeah. Well, hindsight's 2020, right? And I have a technical co-founder at this point, and I am technical, and that's not making it a whole lot easier. So if that makes you feel better.
Yeah. I'll give an update on personal side of things. So in the last episode, we talked about us moving, and we indeed moved. And Dave, it was the biggest shit show in the world. So fucking we move and we have the dog and the cat, 2 cats and a dog, and they're gone and all this kind of stuff, and just fucking moved all of our stuff out of the house. And we get on the plane and that's all good. We have a layover in Amsterdam and we get to the gate for a flight to Boston, and they're like, there's a problem with the plane, blah, blah, blah. We don't know if it'll get fixed or when it'll get fixed. Go to the Amsterdam airport is enormous, right? Go to fucking the other side of the world to book another flight tomorrow or the next day. And we're like, no, dude, like we have things planned down for the next like 4 days, like almost to the hour, like The walkthrough on the house is the separate.
Plus, you've got the animals.
No, the
right?
animals are separate. Like they went and stayed somewhere, and then they were.
Oh, okay.
They flew separate. But yeah, we had
I thought they were flying with you, which I'd be like. I mean, my wife would be freaking out about that.
No, and that's why. So we were like, pay a little extra for the animals to be, in kennels for a couple days, and then on like a proper pet carrier. And it was ungodly expensive, but it was definitely the right move because it was a lot less stressful. And we stayed in a hotel here for a couple days until we closed on the house and stuff. But like we had like. Get here, land at 1, walk through on the house at 3:30, get fucking Verizon. So we have cell service, close on the house at 10 o'clock the next morning, go to CarMax and buy the car that we'd already had shipped in and pre-inspected and all this kind of stuff. Like the whole first 3 days were like planned down to the hour almost. And they're like,
Jesus,
you're going to be a day late. And I was like, no, closing on the house is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Like I got to get there. And so... Oh man, it was so super stressful. So stressful that I was just like sitting there. I was just like, I obviously can't help them fix the brakes on the airplane. And so I'm just gonna sit here and drink maybe. But it's like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh man.
And they, so we're waiting in line to get rebooked on another flight like the next afternoon, which would have pushed the closing back and all this kind of stuff. And they get on and they're like, everyone going to Boston, please go to the gate. The airplane's ready. And we were like, oh, God, thank God. So we did. And we were like a couple hours late, did the walkthrough the next morning before the closing. And everything was fine. But it was like the most ultra stressful thing that like Amanda and I had been working for a month, 6 weeks for all of this. And it was all like perfectly aligned and everything was great. And then like the one thing that could really screw us, aside from a COVID test before we left, which thank God was negative, was the airplane. And so, yeah, we ended up getting here. Everything was fine. Closed on the house, got the car. Kids are in school. I have an office. I have a very noisy radiator in the office. So I hope that the sound for the first 10 minutes of this episode wasn't terrible. But yeah, I mean, all in all, like, kids are in school and are happy and are making friends, and Amanda and I are happy and have a bunch of projects with the house that's 85 years old and like needs a bunch of work, but it's stuff we just really like doing and it's a lot of fun for us and really fulfilling. So all of that, can't complain so far.
Nice. Well, welcome back again.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you survived all of that because it sounds like a stressful as fuck nightmare. They say that that building a house is more stressful, but I think we could rank moving from another country as more stressful than building a house. Because I remember when I built my first house, it was nothing like what you just described. You basically compress 6 months of stress into a week. And yeah, you win. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's cool. It's, I was telling someone that we took the week between Christmas and New Year's off, too, which I'll talk about in a minute. But like, I needed that time just to like unravel a little bit, like there was so much stress and so much going on and so much anxiety that like, I didn't even feel good until like Saturday afternoon before I was supposed to come back to work on Monday, just because like we did so much and there was so much going on, and flew to Orlando to see my parents for Christmas and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, it was way a lot, but kind of what we had to do, and really needed that, kind of almost 2 weeks around Christmas and New Year's to unwind. But definitely feeling better now. It's great to be here. It's a real adjustment to be on the same time zone as most of the team. It's like only overlapping for a few hours with them and then some stuff in the evenings. But now it's like, 8 to 3 or whatever is like prime time, go meetings, work with everyone all the time, which is like a real adjustment because it wasn't like that before. It was like my afternoon and evenings. So it's an adjustment, but a good one so far.
Right. It's basically, I know that you were always describing your evenings as this sort of hectic, pulled away time where you were kind of splitting your focus and attention between your family and random shit that happened in the States late in the day.
Yeah.
Or like, I know you and I podcasted a few times, well, many times at 5 p.m. your time, which would have been like right in the middle of your prime family time. So yeah. that's a huge distraction. So I'm betting that you you feel a whole lot better about that. I know I would.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is getting used to, because it's just like I have to get my work done by 5 because I want to just go be with the family. So it's good, but it's all good. I did, Dave, I don't know, did we do goals like this time last year? I don't feel like we did, but the year before even, my goal was to take a week off work, and I failed miserably, and I did it. I took from the 23rd to the 3rd off, and Castos is still here, and nobody's like flaming mad at me, or like the house didn't burn down. So like it was really amazing. Like I had a whole bunch of email that I'm still not caught up with like here a week later entirely, but it was really nice to be able to take that time off. And I think I checked Slack twice, and I checked email once just to make sure that like some super important bill wasn't due that I didn't know about or something. So it was cool to be able to take that time off. And I think it just gives me permission to do it more often, like I want to take 2 or 3 different weeks off during the year. So looking forward to being able to do that at this point.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. I get that feeling of you're always feeling like I'm missing something, and you've got a bigger staff than I do. So for me, the worry is higher because I know that Mike can carry a lot of that, but not every email ends up in his inbox. So I always feel like, is there something that I missed that I should be forwarding to Mike? Like I remember that feeling when I was gone this last summer for a week. And for a few days, I was able to, have that kind of serenity. But as soon as we got back into cell service, I was like scrolling through my phone like mad, like, oh, crap, is there anything in here? Is there anything in there? Oh, look at that. Nothing's in there.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, wait, there's one thing. No, it's pretty minor. All right.
Yeah.
Mike, I'll send that to Mike anyway. And, like my anxiety about it was clearly way worse than what really happened in reality. So, but I totally understand that feeling. And yeah. But congratulations on being able to pull it off. I know that's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
So, and it sounds like it was it was needed. It was
definitely needed. Yeah. And I mean, I think before, that's the other thing is like it wasn't as needed because I had pretty good like work-life balance to where I could just keep trucking with it. But I think the next one will be even better because it won't be around such a stressful time, and like I can take good vacation, not just like necessary get me back to baseline kind of vacation, but like actually go to whatever, a warm sunny beach with a bunch of daiquiris somewhere or something and just really enjoy, not just kind of recover. But I think the thing that it really brought out was like how I spend my time, in the business now. And like I don't have an answer, but it's just a question of like if, for the most part, right? And let's just say the team was good to be able to do their things. Like, what am I doing, with all of my time? So doing a lot of thinking about that, and again, kind of like retroing myself to say like, okay, what was missed when I was not here? What do I do to add value if like I took a week off and everybody was basically fine? Like what is my purpose and value? And what are the things that I'm going to be focusing on? So don't have an answer, but that's the question at this point.
Right. Well, that's a solid question, and one that I was asking myself, like, am I working, we've said this before, are you working on the business or are you working in the business,
yep.
Right? And for me, it's very much, it's easy for me to go into the business and start doing, the support and the emails and, this and that. And I realized that there, when I sat down and did the EOS thing, that I was like, all right, I'm missing some big strategic things here. And I had a bunch of goals from last year, and some of those goals changed, and I should have just dropped them. So they didn't get done. And some of the goals I was a little ambitious on, and they didn't get done. But like the strategery, if you will, right?
Yep.
The strategery is what you should be focusing on and making sure that everybody is in alignment with that strategy. So, yeah, I mean, you got to be doing more strategerying.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the hard part about being a leader, especially when you've been responsible for day-to-day stuff in the business. For you, you've got more people to do that. I'm not quite there yet, but even I should be doing less of what I'm doing. And I try to, now that I'm working on it full time, I feel like I've gotten a decent cadence to my day to where I understand like how much it takes for me to do the stuff, to do the in the business part, and then I can work on the business part. And I even know like during the week what the cadence is. Like Mondays are usually kind of fucked because there's a lot of stuff that builds up over the weekend, and for whatever reason, everybody just sends their shit in on Sunday night or Monday. So that's usually a high support day. But like Friday's a great day to do strategy stuff, or for me to take a day off and do stuff with my wife, or half a day off.
Yep.
So like Wednesday and Thursday is a great time for me to do more strategic thinking. Tuesdays, maybe there's some spillover from Mondays, but like just knowing that, and knowing that like, I do stuff in the morning and that's more the in the business, and then the afternoon can be on the business. Just being aware of that has made a huge difference for me, because now I can split the time better. And certainly that's one of the things I'm going to be doing moving forward here in 2022, is making sure that I protect that strategic time to make sure that I'm still paying attention to the things I need to pay attention to. That plus making sure that I'm monitoring my rocks and being better about that, which I wasn't at the end of last year.
Yeah.
But,
one thing that I have just started experimenting with in the last few days is not letting email and Slack suck me into, I'll say this, like, I don't mean this meanly, other people's problems, other people's priorities, but taking and do one thing that I think really needs to get done, so that if I do nothing else other than, deal with other people's problems and put out fires and stuff, the one thing got done at least. It's like going to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like, you go to the gym at 5 in the morning and you've been to the gym. Like, they can't take that away from you. I'm trying to do that of like, check Slack and whatever, but just leave those messages as unread, or mark them or reminders or whatever, and then do my thing. And I did that the last 2 days, and it felt really good that like I made that priority for myself at least a little bit every day. And then the weird thing again about like the timing is I find that like the 4 o'clock hour is a really good hour again, because like I typically don't get booked for calls that late. And so at the end of the day, I'm able to do another thing that is, working on the business. And the rest of the time is basically just on calls. Right.
Yeah. So find out what works for you and then stick with that.
Yeah.
A system, you don't rise to the level of your, the rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
Oh,
so
profound. I like it.
Ooh, there you go. There's your newfound profundity from Rogue Startups 2022.
There you go.
Well, on that note, we probably ought to wrap up, because I don't think I have any more profundity in me. So
before we screw it up too bad, right? Yeah, so hope this is helpful and interesting for everyone. Sorry we took a bit of time off around the holidays there, but hope everyone had a good and happy and safe holidays. Dave, glad you're feeling better. Glad your immunity is built up now to Corona, so you can't get it again. But I'm glad that everyone in your house is safe and happy and healthy at this point. And wish everyone else the same happiness and healthiness going into the new year. And wish you all the best.
Yep. Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully it's healthy and Corona-free. And as always, our one ask is that if you found this episode and our show valuable, please share it with somebody that you think would benefit from it. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Rogue Startups. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the show. For show notes from each episode and a few extra resources to help you along your journey, head over to roguestartups.com to learn more.